I'll begin. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. I'm not on camera, guys. But I just wanted to introduce Pete Masiello. So let's start this off with I'm Aiden Butero with Creative Data Research. I'll be recording this webinar for future references. We ask that you post your questions in the chat. This way we can moderate it and log those questions for you and get the answers out to you. It is with my great pleasure that I introduce you to Pete, who will provide an overview on how to best understand your infrastructure modernization path and backup options while moving from an on-premise system to the cloud. Take it away, Pete.
Thank you, Aiden. Hope everyone had a great Memorial Day weekend. And, we're going to talk about some of the projects that CDR and iTech, now Service Express, have done together. We're going to talk a little bit about backups. We'll talk about recovery. We're going to talk about moving to the cloud. We're going to talk about infrastructure. So we got quite a lot of discussion points. At any point you have any questions, please enter them in the chat. And then if I see some of the questions, I will answer them as I go. Otherwise, we'll leave some time at the end. I do want to talk a little bit about who we are first, because I know a lot of people don't really know who we are. About a year ago, Service Express bought iTech Solutions. We've been an IBM Gold business partner specializing in IBM I. And literally, that's all we do. People say, well, what else do you do other than IBM I? And that's it. We do IBM I, we know IBM I, we eat IBM I, we sleep IBM I. We know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And that's what we are. We're an IBM I business partner. We have certified systems administrators and engineers, salespeople. We're certified in high availability, in various components of IBM I. So, with all that, we've done a lot of a lot of engagements with CDR, putting in some new equipment, putting in some new services, and we'll go over that as we talk about things. But I want to kind of tell you just about the things that we do, because if you know who we are, you'll better understand options that are available to you. Because without understanding what's out there in the market, you may not see a need, or you may not realize some of these things pertain to you even. We are a company with 45 technical technical certifications. And I thought I closed my Outlook and it's just popping up. I just got to close all of those. Okay. We have 4 IBM champions and 1 IBM lifetime champion. There's about 600 in the world, and we have 5 of them, so that's a pretty high number for one company. And when we look at the iTech side of the business, the old IBM I side, we have over 1,000 years of combined experience. And now that we've merged with Service Express, we went from 35 people to 900 people. We have put another 1 or 2 zeros at the end of that experience with IBM I. Now you'll know us very well in our education, and we're always out there in the community doing work. We speak at local user groups, we speak at national user groups, we speak at regional user groups. We were at the Converge conference about 3 weeks ago and really had a great time meeting customers down there. But we also speak all around the world. In fact, at the last Common Fall conference, 22 out of the 210 sessions were delivered by iTech. And we're speaking at Common Europe. Next week, I'll be over in Prague speaking there, followed by the week after that, I'll be in Common Austria speaking there. And at the IBM Technical Universities, we're always at those events speaking. Those are real detailed education, and for IBM to ask us to be speakers there, that's a real accolade to what we know about IBM I. and it just doesn't stop with knowledge, right? We're active in the community. We influence. We've been on the Common Board of Directors. I was president of Common for three years. We're on the Common America's Advisory Council, advising IBM of what to put into the next releases as they come out and giving out comments on there. And we have a lot of leadership in local user groups as we're uh, uh, all over the US. We've been in various beta programs. So as new releases are coming out, we're testing them. We're giving information to IBM, and that's really helping get our knowledge as well as having contacts and influence inside of IBM. And you'll see our newsletter every month that goes out to 16,000 IBM I individuals. These aren't just customers; these are people in the community. So we're writing blogs, we're doing podcasts, we have our iTips videos, we have our webinars. We love what we do, and we're really good at it. And it's not just us talking about it. You'll hear that from our customers as well. So why did CDR hook up with us? You know, we've worked with Aiden, we've worked with the CDR team. They understand our knowledge. We've gone on done a couple of installations, and I think they've all been very, very successful, very straightforward, very quick and easy in getting the customer up. And you know, there's nothing like experience to show you what's going on and help you there. We also have some products. We have not kind of products that they're more like solutions. For instance, our Verify product gives you an instant information on one pane of glass telling you about your system, right? How much disk space are you using, so you can track the growth, what your PTF levels, when you did a last system save, if you have a different configurations about your environment, all on there. So just kind of show you. And when we talk about service offerings, you know, let's talk a little bit about, you know, what we offer. Well, you know, we do the hardware upgrades and installations, and we've been working with CDR on all their new hardware installs and upgrades. Migrations, we're certainly easy to migrate from old hardware to new hardware or migrating to the cloud. Setting up partitions. I know most of the CDR people only have one partition. Some of our customers have multiple partitions. It's a way to segregate your workload. Things like tape encryption, right? You don't want to be walking around with unencrypted tapes. Now, you know, it all depends on whether you're public companies or whatnot. But you know, those are things. Also, when we talk about these things, and when we're going to talk about backups, we're going to talk about recoveries. The cool thing about these is, you know, we've helped so many customers. We know the best way to do things, and then we can help with answers to your kinds of questions. And that if it's systems admin, whether it's health checks, whether it's security assessments, whether it's OS upgrades or PTFs, penetration testing, setting up single sign-ons, you know, not to scare anybody, but the year before last, we did 22 ransomware. I don't know what you want to call this, ransomware fixing. We had customers had ransomware. They got hit with a ransomware, and we were able to fix the ransomware. We were able to recover their systems. And so these are things that are prevalent out there. There's a lot of people trying to break into systems, because at the end of the day, the crown jewels of every company is usually running on their IBM I, whether you call it an AS400, an I-Series, an IBM I. That's where the workload is. That's where the systems are running. And, you know, we help with prevention, kind of making sure you're hardened, as we like to call it, so that we go and look at best practices, see what security exposures you may have, and close those up. We can also help you, you know, with a penetration test. So security is something that really needs to be at the top of mind, and not just about your IBM I, right? It's your whole computer infrastructure that you need to be careful about, because people, they want to do some ransomware. They want to get money from companies and extract that or extort that. So, we're helping with that. Now, we talk a lot about, backup recoveries and stuff like that. We talked about moving to the cloud. Well, I kind of want to set the tone for a couple of things because, you know, I don't know the audience as well as Aiden does. I mean, Aiden really knows you guys very, very well, and him and I talk quite often. I always enjoy spending some time with him. I always learn a lot. And you know, when we're talking about customer situations, he's telling me that, most of the customers are on the smaller side. So, they may not have a dedicated IT staff, or if they do have an IT staff, it's a smaller staff. So, you're being pulled in a lot of different directions. So I kind of want to go through some disaster recovery issues as well as the backup and recovery because, part of the reason we're always doing backups is in case of a disaster. So, let's enlighten everybody and make sure we're all on the same page. We all know, when it comes to disasters, what are we talking about? Well, what kind of disasters are there? Excuse me. Well, we have natural disasters. I'm up in the Northeast, so I'm pretty much not in the direct line of many hurricanes, although we still get a nor'easter every now and then. But you look in Florida, you look at the Louisiana coast, you look at Texas. You know, these areas are ripe for hurricanes. You look at Midwest, right? The breadbasket of our country. You see a lot of tornadoes going through. So we have disasters that come through. Obviously, hurricanes give us a lot more warning than tornadoes. But these are things we've always had to worry about from a computer infrastructure standpoint and a company infrastructure as well, right? Certainly a hurricane comes through, it can wipe the entire company out. There's a statistic that talks about 80% of companies that are down for 2 weeks because of a disaster never go back in business. 80%. That's a high number. So how do we make sure we're not one of those 80%, right? What are we going to do to make sure we can recover? Because think about it. What happens if you lost your computer? And people don't understand losing their computers a lot of times. So I always like to make this very, very terrible analogy, but it really drives the point home. Take all your executives, bring them to the front of the building, have them looking out the front windows, light the building across the street on fire, and as you're watching it burn, what would happen if that was your company? What would you do? Would you be able to restore your system? Do you have a backup? Is the backup in the computer room where the fire's happening? Now you lost your computer and you lost your backup. You're going to be one of those 80%. So getting those tapes off site, right? Getting that tape, getting that distance. Maybe you're doing replication. That's all good things, right? But if you don't know about what you should be doing, it's hard to make that first step in. So that's kind of why I want to talk about some of these things, right? And we have the cyber attacks. We talked a little bit about cyber attacks already with the ransomware, but there's a lot of bad actor companies. There's a lot of rogue nations out there that are just waiting to do something, and we got to be protected. It's no different than leaving your lights on at home, right? If you have your lights on at home and a burglar's going through your neighborhood, they're going to look at your house, see it's all lit up, and just go to the next house because that's an easier target. Okay. Now, we don't necessarily want our neighbors to be burglarized, but these are examples to drive the points home that we need to be doing things for our own security, whether it's a natural disaster or a cyber attack. And it could be something not even that big, right? What happens if you lose power? I've been to a few of your facilities, um, you know, really nice environments, but I don't see a lot of generators out in these environments. I don't see UPSs, universal power supplies. So what happens if you lose power? Would you be down? Would you be out of business? You know, how long could you work with power being lost? Could you package your goods? Could you get your trucks moving? Well, what happens if you just lost the internet and not power? Could you still do business? Could you deliver to your customers? Could you bill your customers? Could you collect from your customers? Right? And these are all questions that you need to be thinking about and asking yourself, because that computer is holding all your information about the company. Who owes you money? What did you ship? Right? This information needs to be addressed, and you need to be backing this up. So, this is a destroyed data center. These are actual pictures. This one I pulled off the internet just so that you can kind of see. Fire goes through, it wipes out all your racks. What would you do? What would you do if this was your environment? This is an actual customer. They had destroyed hardware. You can kind of see in this bottom picture here, the water sitting on top of the tape drive, and the tape drive having an error on it. You could see the burnt in this picture here, how it shorted things out. You could see on this cable, this is a ribbon cable attached to the backplane. It got shorted out because of water. Now, water is something that, hey, it rains. Well, how's the roof? Sounds like a funny question when we're talking about the roof. We're supposed to be talking about computers. But if the roof over the computer room was to suddenly leak and flood the computer room, or just start pouring water into the computer room onto electrical equipment, we know electric and water does not mix, evidenced by these types of pictures here. So what do? Well, we have a couple of options. We have disaster recovery, which is, we back up our computer, and then, we do a restore on somebody else's computer, and we run from there. We have high availability. And so the disaster recovery, you think about that. You back up, let's say, every night at 10 o'clock at night. What happens if you lost the system at, let's say, 6 o'clock at night? Well, you lost 20 hours worth of work. How do you recover from that? What did you ship that day? Do you have records of that? Now, high availability may be a term that people aren't used to, but what this means is, as a transaction is entered on my current computer, it's automatically sent to a second computer. Could be at another location that you may have, or it could be in our cloud. And so now you're never really losing more than a few transactions. Probably, and I say it like that because, if a bolt of lightning came down and fried the computer, maybe the last transaction didn't get sent out. So I know, never say it's every transaction, but losing 2 or 3 transactions versus losing 20 hours of transactions is a big difference when it comes to running your business. Then you have continuous availability, which is what usually banks use because they have to make sure, they're always up and online. And then the fourth option, which hopefully nobody's doing right now, is do nothing and pray. Now, I see a lot of people do that, do nothing and pray, until they see that company across the street burning, and then they realize, holy cow, that could be me. What would I do? Right? So I want you to think about that. What would you do if you had a disaster? Now, your recovery is only as good as your backup. So no matter if you try to recover your system, if you don't have good backups, you're not recovering your data. If you don't have the latest copy of CDR data, you're not going to recover your environment. What happens if you're only backing up CDR data every night? Okay, there's a really good chance that Aiden could probably work some magic and recover the programs and stuff like that, right? But you don't really have a full backup. You need a full backup of everything on your system so that in the event of a disaster, you take that tape, maybe you take the weekly backup that you do every weekend, and then the daily backup that you did last night, and you bring those to a recovery center and you rebuild your system. Or you have IBM ship you a new system, or you send it to the cloud, right? One of those things. But these are the pieces to putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. Now, most people are using physical tape. Physical tape is great, right? It provides what's called an air gap. And an air gap is extremely important because in the event of a disaster, and well, let's say in the event of malware, ransomware, the ransomware may start to infect your computers, but it's not going to infect your backup tape because your backup tape has that gap, that air gap. It's on a physical tape that's really not inside the computer. While you're backing up to the tape, it is. But then you take the tape out, you put it back in a box, and then you should take that off site. Now, I know I get in trouble when I say this, but most public companies have to take their backup off site, and they usually use some kind of service that would take it up. Iron Mountain always comes to mind, an expensive option, but an option nonetheless. And they take that out, and now you have that off site. Hey, I'm a big fan of getting the tape off site, and if we have somebody who puts it in a box every night and brings it home, that's a hell of a lot better than leaving it on site. Now, I'm not a big fan of traveling with unencrypted backups, but that's okay. I'd rather have that than have the data left on site. And if you're going to be moving tapes back and forth, we really need to talk about encrypting those tapes so that you need the encryption key to read the tape. The other thing is virtual tape libraries, VTLs. Those are an interesting concept because you back up, instead of to physical tape, you back up to this virtual tape library. It's an appliance basically, and it's a set of disks that you back up to, and then you replicate that backup tape to a second VTL. So now you have it off site, it's usually encrypted, so you're fine. Obviously, backing up to the cloud is another option that we can do. We can also replicate to the cloud. So these are various things. And no matter what you do, you have to test things out, because backing it up, right? Backup. We do backups all the time. When was the last time you tested your recovery? Now, if you have one partition, if you have one system, you don't want to recover your system on your live system, but you can go to us, for instance, and rent a partition out and say, we want to test our backup. And you could test the backup and see how that goes. Now, this is a busy chart, but this is the old IBM source of, are you backing up the right stuff? It has all the commands in there. These numbers here are reflective of the Go Save menu. So it's Go Save, and then option 21 saves the entire system. Option 22 saves just the IBM stuff. Option 23, will set up the IBM stuff. And so you have, boy, I messed it up. Hold on, I gotta take a drink of water. My throat is so sore today and scratchy. So option 22, we're backing up the IBM stuff. Option 23, we're backing up our user data. Option 21 backs up the both of them. So that's what this chart kind of tells you, how to save and how to recover the environment. It's a very busy chart, and we'll try to go into it in a little bit more detail at a higher level than this, but just to make sure you are backing up the right information. Now, backup media. This is an important part of your backup because the media that you back up to, whether it's 1/4-inch cartridge, whether it's 8mm, whether it's LTO, and probably out of all of them, I think LTO is the best. You don't want to have inexpensive media and then not be able to read it. The speed of your media determines how fast your backup's going to be. And if you are having problems with downtime and you need to be up more often, but you still got to bring the system down for backups, we can do things like maybe change your backup media. Maybe we could even go to something like flash copy if you were required to be up 7 by 24. Not sure anybody's in that thing that has that as an issue, but there's different options for everybody based upon what your needs are. And you have to remember that as you get a new machine and you're backing up maybe to a new tape drive, is that new tape drive compatible with the place you're going to do your disaster recovery on? Because you don't want to bring that backup to your disaster recovery site and then they can't read the tape drive because it's not interoperable between the media classes. Now, I've had customers, and it's all about storing these backups, right? And you've heard me say this a couple of times now. Storing them is very important. How quickly can you get them off site determines your exposure. So if you're doing a backup every night, and that's great, but you're only taking your backups off site once a week, not so good, right? Because what happens if you did a backup every night, but now you're getting ready to take them off site and you lost 3 or 4 days worth of data? Yeah, you did backups, but they're not off site. You're not holding them. And if they're on site, they should be in some kind of fireproof vault. And I've seen people store their backup tapes in file cabinets that barely could close. Those are not going to hold up well in a fire, right? Because it's the heat, it's the smoke that's going to damage your backup tape. So I've had customers put them in banks. They put them in the bank vault. Small town, they didn't have any other mechanism. They would store them in the bank. Well, that worked out great. Then they had a flood in town and they needed to get their tapes. Well, the bank was underwater and they couldn't open the vault until the flooding subsided. And that was like 6 or 7 days before the flooding had subsided. So that was an issue. We talk about how many tapes, and we're not getting into the technical stuff yet, but I want you to think about, well, what do you mean how many tapes? I back up Monday through Friday, I got 5 tapes. Not enough, right? You need to make sure you have multiple tapes and you're saving them for a while. Maybe your weekly backups, your daily backups, maybe you're backing up every night, saving for 2 weeks. It's probably good enough. Your weekly or your monthly backups, maybe you should be saving those, the weekly ones for 5, 6 weeks, the monthly ones, maybe you should be doing 6 months, maybe a year, because now these ransomware and malware attacks are getting smarter. They lie dormant in your data for weeks or months, and then they raise their ugly head. Now, at this point, it's already infected on all your backups because the backups before you got hit with the ransomware attack, you've deleted those. So this is important to make sure you have enough copies. Don't you spent all this money on computers, infrastructures, air conditioners, everything else. Don't be cheap and only have a few tapes. Buy a couple of more tapes, spread them out. Maybe have tapes at different locations. Always know where your tapes are because you don't want your data stolen. But maybe you have them at 2 people's homes if you're a small company, just so that you have, if in case of a flood or a tornado, you're just protecting yourself. And if your data is not encrypted, it could be stolen by somebody if the tape got into the wrong hands. Now, when we start talking about backups, we need to have a console. Most of you all have LAN console. You should be able to make sure you can do a full system backup, and you do that full system backup from your console. You usually run this command m subsystem star all, and you go into what's called a restricted state, where your Q control subsystem is in an end status. There's nothing running on the system. And then it says, if you looked at this QSys opera messages, it'll say system ended to a restricted condition. Now you can do your full system save. Now, let's talk a little bit about full system saves. I hear people tell me all the time, oh, I do a full system save. It takes about 10 minutes. And I just shake my head and say, no. And they look at me and go, well, what do you mean, no? Well, which word didn't you understand? No. Um, a full system save does not take 10 minutes. I don't care what machine you're on. It does not take 10 minutes on an IBM I. Maybe you're only doing a save sys. People hear the word save sys, save system. Okay, that's my entire system. No, that's just the operating system when you do a save sys. For most of you, you're probably either running a custom set of commands or you go use the save menu. You may hear it called go save 21 or a save 21. That uses the save menu and takes option 21, which I showed you in the chart, is the full system save. And if we look at this menu, this is the go save 21. You can run the 21 from the console. It's the only place you can run it from, and that will save your entire system. And this is all the things that it will save. It'll end all the subsystems. It'll save the internal license, internal code, the operating system, the security data, the device configuration, all your user libraries, your documents, your distribution lists, all your directories of the IFS, and then start the system back up. When you have one of those, that's how you can recover your system. Without that, you can't recover your system. So when I want to recover my system, I have to know what releases run on what versions of the operating systems. So if you have older hardware, let's say maybe a Power 7, you can only run Power 7, sorry. You can only run 6.1, 7.1, 7.2, 7.3. You can't run 7.4 or 7.5. So you want to make sure that if you're on 7.2, for instance, and somebody says, well, you can recover to my Power 10, well, 7.2 doesn't run on a Power 10. You're not going to be able to do that. So this is a good chart for compatibility between different hardware versions. And if you're on Power 8, Power 9, Power 10, right, these are the releases that you can run on. We really want to be moving towards Power 10, IBM i 7.5. That's where, all the new features, the functions, all the best security is at 7.5, and that's really where you should strive to get to. Whoops. Okay, so let's talk a little about the IBM release roadmap, because this is pretty important. Where does IBM sit? I hear people say, oh, IBM I is going away. That's a crock of you know what. It's not going away. Tell me one other operating system that has support going out to 2035, not 2025, 2035, right? Here's a chart from IBM that has the next two releases when they're coming out. We can see they're coming out 2024, 2027, right? And they're going to be supported out to the last one out till 2035. Now, this doesn't mean there's only two more releases left. There's more than two more releases, but it shows you there's some good life left in it. And I just always ask people, name one other system that has support going out to 2035, and people can't. So we talked about backup. We talked about IBM. We've talked about some hardware. We've talked about the operating systems. Let's talk a little bit about hosting. Hosting is always an interesting thing. And people say, I'm moving to the cloud. I'm going to the cloud. And then people say, why does that automatically change? What is IBM I hosting? What is moving to the cloud? The cloud is just somebody else's computer. That's all it is. And we have two data centers in Michigan. Why did we pick Michigan? Not a lot of hurricanes in Michigan, not a lot of tornadoes, like almost zero. It's low risk for natural disasters. It's got a cooler climate, which gives us real good on the air conditioning, electricity rates, and stuff like that. We're 125 miles apart because we have two data centers with multiple power servers in each one, and they're on different grids. So if you wanted to host your entire environment, you could be in one data center, and you could have replication, high availability to a second data center. So you have the two separate And as I said, they're about 125 miles away. You don't want your data centers too close. I mean, you certainly wouldn't want them being in the same town. I mean, I have customers who've put their data centers in the same building. Not the safest, right? Because if something happened to the building, a flood or tornado or hurricane, there's a good chance it'd wipe out the entire building, not just a half of the building. So, you know, getting it into another town makes a lot of sense. Again, you're probably still going to be on the same power grid, so that may be an issue. Getting it into the cloud absolves you of that because, you know, when we look at the cloud, we're going to talk about advanced power cooling and redundancy, meaning we have generators on site. We lose generator, and first of all, we have power coming in from multiple directions. So we have multiple feeds coming into the data center. Then each data center has 2 redundant generators. So these slides keep moving on me. We have 2 generators, each producing enough power to run the entire data center. So in the event of a disaster, we have uh, we have our generators power. We also have UPSs, so that in the event of a flicker, we will automatically flick. We will automatically run the generators, and we won't lose any downtime. And then the generators kick on after the UPSs are holding the power. We have secure data centers. They are SOC 3 compliant. You need a badge to get into them. You need multi-factor authentication. We have security footage. This is where your computer is. It's in a secure environment. It's supported by our IBM I engineers. So we know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And we have great connections. We have dark fiber between the data centers, which gives us great performance. And we also have 8 different telco companies that terminate in there. So we have some good communications to it. So why are you want to move to the cloud? That's probably the first question. Everybody's got a different reason for it. So some good reasons and there's some bad reasons, right? I want to move there for business reasons. Great reason. You know, I want to expand. I want to take the onus out of one central data center where all my companies come into. I want to put that in the cloud. So if I lose connectivity, I don't lose all the other stores that may be connected to you. There's also expandability. You know, when you buy an IBM I, it's pretty static. You can't just keep adding memory. You can't add disk. You can add to a certain degree, but you're going to add to it in integer increments, right? If I have one CPU and I need to add another 20%, I have to add another CPU. I can't just add 0.2 of a processor. If I need more disk, I can add more disk drives, but I just can't add a small amounts. And that's what I mean by expandability. Geographic separation, one of the best reasons. I want to replicate to the cloud. I want to use my cloud as a DR backup. We have customers that back up to the cloud, meaning they have a VTL and they back up to their VTL and their VTL replicates to the cloud. Now, in the event of a disaster, we have all their backups in the cloud and we can immediately recover their system. And there's your second location as well. Probably the worst reason for moving to the cloud, because somebody in my organization read about it in the paper and wanted to move to the cloud. Not really a good reason to do that, but it does happen. Now, we're going to talk about the cloud, and I want to talk about a couple of things that I think when people talk about moving to the cloud, they don't see the whole picture. If we bring a cloud solution in, and sometimes people say, well, it's going to be cheaper to move to the cloud. It probably is. But let's talk about all the costs, because you may get a quote for the cloud and say, holy crow, this is a lot more expensive than I thought it was going to be. Well, wait a minute. Did you account for everything? Are you accounting for your electric usage? Because when you buy a cloud service, they're going to charge you one price. And that cloud service, you're going to say, hey, I want this much CPU, I want this much disk, I want this much memory, I want backups to happen with a retention of 14 days for weeklies, for dailies, and 30 days for monthlies. Okay. Um, well, you got the electric usage. You're not counting that, but that's factored into the cloud number. You got AC. Not only do you have the air conditioning units, but you got to drive the air conditioning units, so that's going to cost more electric as well. You got the upkeep on the maintenance of the air conditioners, the purchase of the air conditioners. Um, do you have a UPS and a generator or a generator? Maybe you only have one. Well, if you need both a UPS and a generator, that's going to cost a lot of money. Are we accounting for that? What about the space in the building itself, the computer room? If I didn't have a computer room on site, could I use that for other offices, which may mean I may not need to get a second building? The actual hardware, always people think about. So this is interesting because people talk about the cost to move to the cloud. They get a number from us, and let's say it's $1,500 a month. Well, let's say $2,000 a month. It'll be easy to do that. And then we say, okay, well, that's $2,000 a month. Over, if we take that by 36 months, that's $72,000. But a new computer is only going to cost me $1,000 a month, and over 36 months, that's 36,000. And you're thinking, well, the new computer is a lot cheaper, but we didn't add these other costs in that may balance that equation. And remember, the cloud provider is providing software maintenance and hardware maintenance for the IBM side of it. The CDR software maintenance, you're going to continue to pay, but that's as we move to the cloud, we got to think about all the costs. And we've talked about location a little. You know, the key is, when you buy real estate, right? They always say location, location, location. Well, when you're talking about cloud, it's redundancy, redundancy, redundancy. How much redundancy do I have? Like I said, our cloud has multiple generators, multiple UPSs. Every rack has a power feed from the A side and the B side. So if we lost things, we could still continue to run. We have multiple data providers coming into the building. So there's different fiber drops. So again, we have that redundancy. It's all about redundancy. And when you talk about the cloud, are you going to go to the cloud? If you do, what kind of hours are there? Is there any security involved? Do you have to be on a list to get in there? Boy, I hope so, because we just don't want anybody going to the cloud and getting near your computer. Is it locked up? Are there locks on the racks? These are all the things that we think about. Now, most of the time, we're not really going to the cloud, so it doesn't really matter where the provider is. But it's just a matter of, distance. Can you get there? And then, so who mounts the tapes? Who puts this in? Who escorts the IBM SE in or CE in? Well, that's what we call helping hands. And that's another part that's included in these cloud services. So, those are the things to think about when going to the cloud. But when we say going to the cloud, how do we get there? Well, if you've been a CDR customer for a while, you've gone from, let's say, a Power 6 to a Power 8 or a Power 7 to a Power 10 or whatever it is, right? And you've done that migration. And I've done a few migrations with Aiden along the way. And you do a backup and you take the tape out of the old tape drive, put it in the new tape drive, and restore it to the new environment. Well, that's all said and good when it's new hardware, because the hardware is sitting in the same data center. So it's pretty easy. What happens when you go to the cloud? How do you get your data there? Well, we can do that a couple of different ways. We can do it with tapes, although there's going to be a little downtime, so that may not be an issue. We can do it with 2 VTLs, and then we replicate the data, so it's literally the same as moving the tape. That's a great way of doing it. We can also do it with replication. That requires some licenses and some good bandwidth. but we can replicate the transactions from one machine to the new machine, and then just cut over to the new machine in the cloud. We can FTP it. If you're small, that works. If it doesn't, you're going to kill yourself doing FTP, is file transfer. And the issue is we talked about save and restore is the distance. So that's why things like replication, VTLs really help that, because it gets us there quicker. So just to finish one little quick topic is managed services. What is managed services? Managed services is where somebody takes care of the infrastructure. It's another option that we offer. It's not like we're not doing it at the application level. That's still a CDR type of thing. This is at the infrastructure level. So maybe we're doing your OS upgrades, your PTFs, things like that. Basically, the benefits of this is to have somebody who knows what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And they access your machine. We have a highly skilled set of staff members who can monitor your system 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, whatever you need. But it gives you that experienced administrator that you may not be able to afford, you may not be able to find, maybe he or she is retiring, other types of reasons for having a benefit of that. So just a couple of recent CDR projects that we've worked together on for OS upgrades, Power 9s installs, migrations, Allison wholesales, BTC wholesales, Burks, Capital Candy, Franklin, Lee D wholesale, Nix distribution. A couple of these we saw down at the Converge conference 3 weeks ago as well. We did some security and remediation, and these were proactive, so that they were getting in front of any kind of security issues that may come up. We've moved a couple of customers to the cloud, so that they've been in the cloud and work through that. And then some OS upgrades and PTF services. It's important to keep up to date with PTFs. PTFs are program temporary fixes. When IBM finds a vulnerability, finds a problem with some existing code, it puts out a PTF. So you want to be on the latest PTFs so that you're protected and you get the ability to use the new features and functions as well. So that is part of the iTech difference. It's a bunch of dedicated experts who know IBM I, who know power systems, and we can deliver those to you, providing various one-off projects, security assessments, OS upgrades, working with new hardware, whatever it is, we can help you with that. So at that point, I'll see if there's any questions. I don't see any questions, but we can open up to questions. You can enter your questions. I'll bring Aiden back on, and we can talk a little bit about anything I may have missed or he wants to add in.
Pete, you were great.
Thank you.
I feel like you covered the topics. Yeah, I'll open the floor to anybody has any questions. I'd like to hear them.
And as we're waiting for anybody to raise any questions, it's important to understand what's out there in the environment. The worst kind of security is the ostrich who puts his head in the sand when they see a problem and just ignores it. The problem doesn't go away. So we really need to address these and nip them in the butt. And you've heard me say we have the knowledge, the experience, the know-how to really handle your infrastructure. And teaming up with CDR, who has the best applications in the industry with the best infrastructure in the industry, really provides everybody for a winning team, a win all around. So Adrian, any questions you could think of that they may have that you want to ask on their behalf? I mean, something I didn't cover or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah, I think the big thing is like when they moved to the cloud, it was always the thing I hear time and time is what happens if the internet goes out? And my response is that's a cheap, easy fix. You get two internets. Um,
Correct.
like in my local area, it's an extra $30 a month. To keep your business running for an extra $30 a month, that's a no-brainer. That's that's
Correct.
my stance on it. It's, hey, you get two internets. Um, leverage the Service Express team to maintain that box. I feel like this partnership with Service Express puts our distributors back at being distributors. That's what they're good at. Like you guys don't want to have a system administrator. You guys aren't in the business of maintaining an IBMI. Kick that off to somebody who's great at it. And looking at the industry, Service Express was hands down like the best. I know a lot of support questions have fallen into my lap, and sometimes fall outside of CDR scope. But I, as someone who's into the IBMI, I like to go look it up and help out our customers. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on mid-range on the old email forums, finding a question from 10 years ago, Pete Masiello's name's written on it. So yeah, like it's a great asset to have. So I'm glad Service Express can work with our customers now.
Great. All right.
Yeah, I don't see any questions. I guess we can end the recording. Give everybody a few minutes of their time back. Just want to thank everybody for joining. I appreciate it. And I'm sure you'll hear more from CDR and Service Express. Thanks everybody for showing up.